Good afternoon. My name is Prabhakar Kodandaraman. I'm the Dean for the School of Business, and it gives me great pleasure in welcoming you to the School of Business panel on Bridging Bytes in Business, AI's Impact on New York. Before we begin, it's my duty to thank a few people without which putting the panel together couldn't have happened. Jennifer Hill, Executive Director, Career Services and Corporate and Foundation Relations at SUNY Oswego University Development. Christy Eck, Assistant Vice President of Workforce Innovation and External Relations. And I believe one of our panelists, Michael Backus, also partnered with Jennifer to get us a panel member. So thank you. I also thank Associate Dean Rehan Khan and our digital marketing intern, Selena, and as well as our wonderful staff assistant, Jessica Burridge. Before I proceed, I also welcome our faculty who are here, and many of them are joining us online, and our provost and other members of the president's cabinet who are here. So welcome. I now turn to Professor Mohammad Tajvarpour, who readily agreed to moderate this panel without any hesitation and enthusiastically designed and recruited panelists. An assistant professor in the Department of Marketing, Mohammad came to Oswego in 2020 and has made a name for himself as an innovator who likes to work on cutting-edge topics. He was one of the first in the country to design and offer an MBA class on AI and ChatGPT last year. He is fond of working with large data sets. Yeah, he is. And to find relationships between things that are not readily discernible. He is liked by his students. I believe we will have one of his MBA students on the panel today later on, and respected by all his colleagues. He has a PhD in marketing from McMaster University, an MBA, and an undergraduate degree in electrical, electronics, and communications engineering. Over to you, Mohammad.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for attending this session. I'm going to do a quick introduction, and then we can start the panel. So, welcome, everyone, to the Hybrid Symposium, hosted by SUNY Oswego on Bridging Bytes and Business, the Future of Generative AI, and its influence on New York's horizons. Today, we explore the profound impact of generative AI on upstate New York. Our discussion unfolds in two parts. First, three esteemed online panelists from research and academia will delve into the latest developments in generative AI. Following that, three visionary business leaders here in upstate New York will share their real-world experience with AI innovation. As we embark on this journey, I encourage you to engage in this discussion and ask questions whenever you have. Thank you for joining us, and let the conversation begin. So I'm going to introduce the esteemed guests, the online panelists that we have here, one by one. If you want to say hello after I introduce you, please feel free to. I start with Soroush. Soroush Saghafian is an associate professor at the John F. Kennedy School of Governance at Harvard. He is the founder and director of Harvard's Public Impact Analytics Science Lab, with focus on utilizing analytics to confront pressing societal problems. Deeply immersed in artificial intelligence, Soroush studies AI from the perspective of a human algorithm center, a concept that amplifies decision-making by leveraging capabilities of both humans and machines. Soroush, do you want to say hello to the audience?
Hello, and thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Thank you for joining us. We have Dayan Maskiali. Dayan is a three-time National Emmy Award winner. She is the Vice President and General Manager at the WNet Group, overseeing Long Island's public media stations. Dayan is also one of the executives in charge of Amanpour and Company, the national PBS night series featuring CNN's Christian Amanpour. Dayan graduated from journalism school at the University of Missouri, Columbia. Dayan studied MBA at SUNY Oswego, and she was part of the first cohort of the ChatGPT for Business course. Dayan, do you want to say hello to everyone here?
Yes, thank you so much for having me, and I was thrilled to be a part of the class. I learned so much, and I'm very excited to talk about this topic with everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Glad to have you here. And the last but not least is Saeideh. Saeideh holds a PhD in computer science from Georgia Tech and boasts a unique blend of academic rigor and practical experience. She has contributed her skills to a variety of social, machine learning, and artificial intelligence projects with esteemed industry giants such as Yahoo, Google, and Meta. Saeideh, do you want to say hello to the audience?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here. I'm excited to be part of this discussion.
Okay, perfect. And thank you for everyone for attending this session. I'm going to start asking questions, but before I do so, I want to say hello to everyone who is joining us online. I was checking the registrations yesterday, and we have audience from all over in US, Canada, Ireland, United Kingdom, France, Germany, and Sydney, Australia. So I want to say hello to everyone who is joining us internationally, regardless of the time differences. So I'm going to start asking the questions. So the first question that I have is about the use of generative AI. So the panelists, can you please tell us, can you elaborate on how you use generative AI in your field, and what are the forthcoming advancements that you anticipate? So I will start based on the order that I see on my screen. I will start with Saeideh. Saeideh, do you want to start answering this question?
Sure. So in general, in industry, I see a trend of generative AI being used in three different applications, set of applications. I guess the first one that we are most familiar with is around applications that are built on top of LLMs for productivity. These are the kind of applications that help automate some of the regular tasks that we humans do, but they can be replaced by machine to make us more efficient, whether it is at work or at home. The other set of applications that I see happening and things that companies are investing in building are around companionship. And that is an interesting area where like an AI agent could be potentially perceived similarly to do something that a human would do. Like think of it in the use cases of coaching, tutoring, helping with physical health or mental health applications. And then the third one that I think is pretty interesting and is something that this technology is particularly enabling that was not existent before is generative AI being able to change the way that we create content. So in the past 10 years, we've been providing tools for people to democratize a creation of content, but people were creating content. But now algorithms can go actually further and add some aspect of creativity. And I don't know exactly, like I think that is the area that is still not very clear of what are the potential application and how it's going to change the world. But it's pretty exciting to look at. And in general, I feel like there is just so much that could be happening in terms of advancement. But the one that I'm more excited about is the applications of multimodal models, like when we are not only looking at text, but also looking at audio, contextual images and audio to create a world view of the world.
I think the point that you mentioned, multimodal use of machine learning and AI, that would be very interesting forthcoming technology. So Soroush, can you tell us about how you're using AI currently and what are the forthcoming advances that you expect in this field?
Sure, yeah. So I myself use it mainly for productivity, for writing letters. As an academic, I have to write a lot of letters, and I use it mainly for things that make me a little bit more productive. But obviously, we also use it for research, and we're doing several experiments in trying to figure out how this generative AI tools can be enhanced. And one of the areas where I'm excited to see how we can help and how we can, advance the abilities of generative AI is when it comes to problem solving and to doing tasks that require a little bit of causal understanding. So a lot of experiments are being done using generative AI, as Mohammad, you may know, that are showing that there is some cognitive capacity there. It is not to say that these systems have the ability to reach human level of intelligence. We still don't know whether they can or not. But the fact is that they have been able to pass a lot of test experiments from cognitive psychology, and the part of the test where this generative AI models are still weak are related to things when it comes to problem solving and causal inference and understanding things that require to trying to figure out causal relationship. And that's the area where I want to see we make more progress. And this is important because a lot of people in different fields, they are using it for getting advice. And a lot of times when you need an advice, it might require you to go a little bit deeper than just the surface and just, for instance, staying with the association between different variables that you have. And so that's one area where I'm, looking forward. But it has been, it's been the evidence shows that when it comes to productivity, as Saeideh mentioned, lots of advantages. There are experiments that were done with consultants at BCG, and the results shows that in a lot of tasks, it actually makes them more productive. People who use it, but the main question is for what type of task you should use it, and for what type of task you shouldn't use it. And I guess we can talk about it later. But the parts that I don't see a lot of use right now is essentially in terms of cognitive abilities that require causal understanding, and that's what I want to see more progress there.
I can I agree with you on that in that regard. These systems are good at creating content, at communicating with people when it comes to logic, when it comes to causal relationship, when it comes to arithmetic. There is still a very good room for improvement. So, Dayan, you're in journalism, which is very, I would say, related to how content is being created. So, can you tell us how you are using ChatGPT or AI in your field, and what do you see happening next?
Thank you. Yes, I think that generative AI is being used in media in many aspects. It has been for years. People may not realize that, particularly for data collection and curation. For instance, years ago, I was at a presentation by the Wall Street Journal where it demonstrated how it was aggregating sports scores and disseminating them to its readers in a more efficient and also accurate way using generative AI to present this kind of hard number-based information. Another example, which is a little bit newer, but that a lot of people might actually be using, whether in the media or not, is automated speech recognition systems like OpenAI's Whisper transcription tool, which can take audio text files and transcribe them into audio files and transcribe them into text files in English and multiple languages. That's really useful for journalists when they're doing their work, or anyone in the media when they're doing interviews or recording, an interview with someone that they want to reference back and go back and get a text file quickly. This is an open source tool, and this is really important. So the worry about inputting sensitive information into a GIA engine like ChatGPT can be eliminated if you set the tool up to work locally so it doesn't allow for the data sharing, and that's critical. Most of us probably use, generative AI for things like grammar and spell checker. That's really something that the media uses regularly, as do most of us. And when you think about journalists in the field or people in the media, or even just if you're driving around, finding your way around an area, if you don't know your way, or it's known or unknown. I mean, I have used AI mapping. It's a critical tool, and it's a great thing to be able to have access to when you're in the field and you're trying to get somewhere quickly. So journalists are using those kinds of tools. And AI is also really great for doing things like finding patterns in statistics for tasks that are hard to do but easy to verify. And I think you're going to see some evolution around things like capturing metadata for identifying content and archiving, perhaps easy editing of media clips with assistance from AI tools. And prompt engineering can be used to help spark creative ideas, create images, headlines, synopsis of hard to understand topics, and probably, of course, many, many other areas. Those are just some of the ways that, journalists and the media are using these tools, and there are many others.
Wonderful explanation of use of AI in journalism. So I will move forward to the second question, and I will start with Soroush for this question. So, in your perspective, what are the key advantages and risks associated with AI? Soroush, I know that in your research you are using a very interesting metaphor. You call it so can you talk about that, how it is related to improving human efficiency, and what are the harms that you see in AI?
Sure. Yeah. So let me first, talk about your first question, which is about the center model. So what we have done is that we have been trying to propose and trying, based on our experiments, trying to move the AI. So if you think about the AI models, they are now built over available data sets. And in some applications, this is great. But in some other applications where, for instance, if you're a medical doctor and you need to decide what to do with your patient, or if, lots of other applications where you need to try to consult with AI, what we have found is that because the system does not provide something that matches the intuition of humans, the algorithm aversion, which is the fact that a lot of humans don't trust that these are insensitive areas, like, in medical, for instance, decision making, if you make a wrong decision, then there's going to be a lawsuit, your patient going to die and things like that. And so what we have done, we have moved this AI system, and we've been trying to at least do that, to systems where we call them Centaur, which are half human, half algorithms. And these have a lot of advantages, which is that one of them is that now the recommendations that we are seeing coming out of the algorithms, the AI, matches human intuition much better. And this has been done already to some extent, like when you think about reinforcement learning with human feedback that is used by lots of this LLMs, you see that it's trying to capture human intuition and feed it back to the algorithm so that the outcomes of the algorithm matches in a better way, matches human intuition. So that's what we've been trying to do, is that to try to capture human intuition first and then add that to the capabilities of AI algorithms so that the performance enhances. Now, in terms of the risks, that was the second part of your question. The risks are not limited, unfortunately, and we've seen several misuses of these algorithms. So scammers are using them a lot to trick people, to give them their sensitive information. We have seen lots of misapplications, is a better word for it, in trying to convince people to vote for a specific candidate. So, if you have a specific candidate and you want a lot of people to vote for that candidate, what you can do is that you can work with these large language models to write short, convincing sentences that you could then put on lots of fake accounts on Twitter and other social media platforms. And those sentences are so convincing, and you can personalize it to a specific person. You can say, okay, I want to convince a 7-year-old woman in, let's say, this specific city to vote for this specific candidate. And this specific person is a mother of 2. You can just, make it really detailed. And then, it provides very convincing argument. And then you can create, as I mentioned, fake accounts and put that on fake accounts. And so that way you could, shift the votes towards specific candidates. Then when it comes to terrorism, we are seeing lots of, misuses for, developing specific strategies for terrorism, for instance. These are all really serious issues, and I know that the Congress and lots of other regulatory agencies are working, trying to figure out what to do so that those risks are mitigated. And we can also talk about why, for instance, this generative AI models should be or should not be open source. There are risks when, if they make that open source, then there are more risks. But there might be ways that they could be made open source so that the risk is also mitigated, but the benefits are enhanced. There's lots of benefits if you make things open source, obviously. For researchers like us, it's hugely beneficial to try to work with the systems more openly. But there are also risks because there are people who are going to misuse it, and they are going to develop their own versions of it that could do things that we do not want to see.
The complete explanation. So, Saeideh, do you want to build on that? So what are the risks and advantages that you see in generative AI?
Sure. Yeah, to build on what Soroush said, basically, when you have a new technology, a very powerful technology that could power a lot of new innovation, there is also a lot of unknown about it. So advantages and opportunities are just limitless. I am very excited about this space because I think that it's an inflection point, and there is a lot that we could be building on top of these models to actually make human lives better. But at the same time, there are going to be a lot of challenges and risks and potential harms that they could cause. And the way that we could be thinking about these potential challenges and harms, I think there are like two types of problems. There are the type of risks that we understand, that we at least know that, okay, like for example, these foundational models, these LLMs are built based on biased data. And so they could potentially be biased and not representative of the needs of like minorities or marginalized groups, for example. Or we know that they could be challenging us in terms of like data privacy, in terms of security, in terms of like ethical challenges, like with deep fakes and things like what Soroush, for example, was mentioning, that people build this stuff and pretend that this is like a human-like agent or human-like artifact. So those are the things that we actually know where to look, and we know that we need to invest in understanding those and maybe putting some guidelines around it. But there is also the type of risk that we don't know what we don't know, because this is new technology. It is also and everybody, like in the industry, there are a lot of hands, a lot of people want to innovate and build new solutions, and we don't know what happens when those solutions get mass adoption. For example, like when smartphones became a thing, or when social media started rising, we had no idea that we would be worrying about this screen time and mental well-being of people at that point, right? So now also it is hard to know what are some of those unknown risks that could happen because of these innovations in this technology. And that's where it is very important to have academics and industry leaders and proactively looking into those and testing these before making it more widespread, like letting people adopt it at a larger scale.
Touched on a very important point with regards to biases. I remember in our ChatGPT class with Dayan and others that we have, we discussed a lot about the biases against minorities. And we were talking about not only having diverse data, but also diverse group of scientists who are sensitive to different biases to work as a team and make algorithms that are at least less biased than the current ones. Thank you very much for your talk here. So, Dayan, do you want to mention what you think are the risks and the advantages of AI? I think fake news could be one of the biggest risks in journalism. So,
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we've touched on some of them, and it goes without saying that there's great potential and also great peril associated with the use of AI in the media landscape. You know, it's a multifaceted tool for media organizations to put in their arsenal with key advantages towards what we said, like productivity, efficiency, creativity, information dissemination, and other things. But the risks associated with AI are a critical focal point that bears a lot of examination and accountability. I work now in public media, which is, you would know as PBS and NPR. My company, the WNET Group, adheres to the PBS and NPR editorial guidelines for the use of AI, which have been instituted and are core to our work and core to public media. And, you know, public media is by some considered to be one of the most trusted news sources. And that is something that we take very seriously. And with generative AI, we have some new things that we need to be paying attention to live up to that in the face of AI usage. The standards of accuracy, not assuming that the AI output is factually correct or a reliable source of information, just like with any source of information, whether it's talking to an expert or, you know, research, the information that AI is generating, if you're asking it to, must be verified. You cannot take it at, you know, first blush. Transparency. We have to be transparent with our audiences, just like we have to be transparent if we use AI in our schoolwork to let our professors know, hey, we used AI in this way, and here's how it impacted my work. We have to do the same thing with our audiences, no matter where they are, so that they can make up their own minds about the veracity of the information that they are receiving. And inclusiveness. We talked about bias. It's a core principle of public media and media, hopefully, in general. And it's our responsibility to guard against these biases and not perpetuate them. In some cases where AI is used and acknowledged, it might be necessary to provide additional links to other credible, high quality resources for audiences to access additional information and viewpoints. And we can't just stop with GAI. It's the job of the media to disseminate information using these tools and really making sure that the veracity of it stands. One of the things that we talked about, and is something that is pervasive and really, you know, critical, is, you know, misinformation, and how we talked about, you know, the use of how easy it is for information to be manipulated, how much easier it is with GAI. And, you know, we have to guard against that and help the public to be able to spot this and dissect the information to get the most truthful sources. You know, one of the ways that we're doing it here at the WNET Group is we have a digital series called Take on Fake. And it really examines exactly this issue. You can watch it on YouTube or TikTok at Take on Fake, because this is such a critical issue. How do you know the information that you are receiving is valid? And with GAI, it's even more of a concern. So, I mean, there's great potential, but there's a lot to think about, and there's great peril on many, many levels as well. Following good, strong guidelines really can help.
That was very interesting. I think putting together all the things that the panelists mentioned, the example that Soroush provided of a Twitter account, right? And what Saeideh mentioned about multimodal artificial intelligence, the one that can create not only text, but can create images and videos for us, right? And putting it in the context of fake news, right? It's not going to be just a tweet created by generative AI in future. It may be a video that they create, right? Putting sentences in people's mouth, right? Saying something that was never said by that person and showing it in a very realistic way. So that can be very scary, and I definitely we need to find ways to control for that and at least mitigate those risks. So that brings us to the last question, actually, which is about regulations. So what do you think should happen with regards to regulations to accommodate the improvement in the technology, but at the same time, mitigate the harms, right? Protect people against the harms of AI. For this question, I will start with Diane. Diane, can you please go ahead?
Sure. Well, in the media, we do not want government intervention in terms of, freedom of speech or any of the sort of guiding principles of, our country and journalism. But having said that, I do think that we need some guardrails around certain things. I'll address two of them. One is creative copyright issues. I think that in most sectors, whether it's the media or any other, we must protect our work, and putting intellectual property into a GAI system jeopardizes that. Human content needs to be creative and human generated for it to be copyrightable. So using AI tools completely makes that much more difficult. And it's an issue that the media and all of us must figure out. We've already seen court challenges around this, and there's still a long way to go in that area, but I think it's critical. And the other area we're seeing borne out in the Writers Guild and the Actors SAG-AFTRA Guild strikes, which is personal identity issues. These are real questions about, as you mentioned, AI manipulation of work, of likeness, of voice, of brand, of images, and more. And I think these are some of the areas that need to be addressed and managed effectively as we use these GI tools, and it barrels through just about every aspect of the media landscape and our world in general.
Wonderful answer. So, Soroush, I know that you do a lot of research in healthcare, and there is definitely need for regulations of using AI in that sector. So, what do you think? What do you expect the regulations to? How do you expect the regulations to be adjusted to accommodate use of AI at the same time, make sure that people are protected?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. And so one of the things I've talked about is that in healthcare and some other domains, we have this principle, which is called premium non nocere, which means first do no harm. And that is a very difficult thing to do with AI. And the regulations need to be at a level where you don't want to limit the creativity and the ability of the systems to reach their potential. But at the same time, if you're a regulator, you have to make sure that, the systems do not, do harm. And that's a very challenging and difficult task. What worries me right now is that, and I've had conversation with, people high level at lots of these companies, the foundation companies that are developing generative AI tools. Is that the Congress right now is asking, these people to give comments about how this system should be regulated. What worries me is that researchers are not that much involved in the discussion. The main discussion is surrounded by CEOs and developers in these companies, which have a skin in the game. They do not want to give up their biometric data sets that they have. They have images of lots of people. They have sensitive information of lots of people that probably they shouldn't have, but obviously because of the profit system that we have in the US, they don't want to give up those data sets, and they don't want, from some aspects, AI to be regulated, but they do want AI to be regulated because of their competitors. So in summary, there are responses that I've heard, and the feedback that is given, unfortunately, to the Congress and other policymakers is, to a great extent, based on their incentives, financial incentives mainly. And we have this vicious cycle where profit allows you to get more involved in the policy, in regulations and things like that. And then you can, affect regulations, and then it increases your profit, and then you get more powerful and more powerful and more powerful. So what worries me is that in these discussions, researchers who do not have a skin in the game, but they understand, the perils of these systems are not involved. But I do hope that the regulations become the regulations will be such that these incentives will not be involved in how we regulate these systems. And as I mentioned, it's a very difficult task, very delicate, because you don't want to limit the abilities of the systems and their future, but at the same time, there are risks. And so how do you make a balance there is a very difficult, very delicate task. You mentioned in healthcare, we are seeing like physicians are using the systems and they make mistakes. I have had experiments where the recommendation that comes out of the system essentially would kill the patient. So if you're a physician and you're not careful, you would do something that would kill your patient because the AI recommended that to you. Well, with fine tuning and other methods, researchers like us and some other universities, they are trying to remove those things. But at the same time, how do you regulate those things so that in future physicians, other decision makers can use that in their tasks, and we don't see those misuses that we saw. Essentially, regulations have to do. To me, they have to limit two things. One thing that we talked about, which is what Saeideh mentioned, is about the performance, the biases, things like that. Those are related to the performance of the AI, or that I mentioned that gives a wrong recommendation. Those are in terms of the performance. But then there is the misuse and misapplication, like the applications that I mentioned I teach in my class to students to create fake speeches of President Obama, and then they cannot, when you show that to the students, they cannot see which one is fake and which one is not fake. So how do you regulate those misuses is a challenge too.
That was a very wonderful explanation of the needs in regulation, especially involving more and more of scientists who don't have financial benefits, right? Financial motivations, incentives to provide more impartial suggestions to the regulators, to Congress and other regulatory systems. Saeideh, what do you think about regulation? How do you think the regulation should evolve? You work at Yahoo, you work at Google, you work at Meta. I think you need a lot of data to do your research to improve the systems that we have. So how do you think the regulation can help you at the same time protect people?
Yeah, I wanted to echo what already been discussed by Diane and Soroush. Really great points, and I agree with them. Being on the industry side, industry moves very fast. Extremely fast, and from what I see is always like regulation policies are like afterthoughts. They come after something is already developed and is being used. But because of the potential impact that this could have on humanity, on even on our livelihood, on future economy, like there are so many huge aspects of the impact that generative AI can have. So I think it is very, very important to bring both government and independent agency early on into these discussions. And I agree with Soroush that there is a lot of discussion happening on the technology side. It's happening on from the point of view of engineers and developers and those who are building these systems. But what we really need is to look at these systems from a much more diverse perspective. We need humanists, we need academics in different aspects. We need people who can think about like the potential impact on economy, on politics, so we need to bring participation from a lot of different parties, research, independent agencies, government agencies, to actually think about what would the impact be, and then set up best practices and guidelines for the industry to operate on, and then potentially audit the industry without like really limiting the innovation enthusiasm that is right now going on. So we don't want to stop it. But we want to try to move as fast as they are moving, and on the side, rather than waiting and seeing how it's going to impact and then putting regulations and policies in place. I also think that there are particular areas that could potentially have significant impact. Like so there is like healthcare that is dealing with people's actually life. Like there is education that is thinking the audience that is using those kind of applications are our next generation, our kids. So like thinking more thoughtfully about all of these applications where it's taking us and adapting our systems, like our education system, our healthcare system, and like being able to move at the same pace with some of these developments would be really helpful.
I think you mentioned a very good point about the pace of change. Pace of change is very fast in AI, and regulations are lagging. They are way behind the technology in this aspect. And we definitely need a collaboration between industry, academia, and all the stakeholders to have regulations that are fair, and at the same time help companies to improve the technology that they want. So I know that I promised that we can conclude the session at 3. So we have 5 minutes left. I think we can take 2 or 3 questions from online audience and those in the room. So if you have any questions in the room, yes, please.
Thank you, Mohamed. The question I have has to do with metrics for productivity, because in my discipline and in software engineering, you do see gains as much as 30% in productivity, but the expectations haven't really necessarily changed. Previously, in adding new technologies, we certainly have seen expectations for productivity have gone up with the addition of the new technology. You still don't see that. I'm assuming that will be coming.
Okay. So if you heard, did you hear the questions? The question, it was about the productivity expectation. So what do you see? Do we see an increase in the expectations regarding productivity of the employees, or reduced working hours? What do you expect to happen?
I can maybe
Yeah, go ahead, please.
So this is a very interesting question, and I think this is a very similar kind of discussion happened when internet became a thing, that we thought like, okay, we have smartphones, we have computers, now we are going to be super productive and we are not going to lose any time, and we are going to do, and there has been data showing that there has been an improvement on productivity. But if you think about it, with internet, there's also a lot of consequences that like distract us and put us like, I don't know, entertainment became much more readily available. So if that kind of balances itself out, I think similarly with generative AI and all these applications, that like, yeah, there are going to be some parts of our life that could be automated or easier to do, but I have a hard time imagining that it's going to like revolutionize the way that we work, or we are going to be like 50% more productive on a day-to-day, because it's human nature to also look for different type of works. So we create new how do you say that? We create new type of meaningful work for ourselves. So I think the nature is gonna just change, but I'm not clear if the same metrics of productivity are gonna apply then in the future. If that makes sense.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. I think we don't have any questions here. So, and it's 3 p.m. I promise to conclude the session. So, respecting the conclude the online session. So, respecting the time limits of our panelists. Thank you very much. Thank you for attending this session. Thank you for sharing your wonderful opinions with us. We are going to move forward to the in-person part of the session. So those who are attending online can still view the in-person discussion. But thank you, Dayan, thank you, Soroush, and thank you, Saeideh, for joining us, and thank you for sharing your wonderful ideas.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now we are going to move forward to the next step, which is the business leaders discussion on how AI is being used by the industry and how they expect the industry to be using AI in future, and what would be the skills that they want our students to be equipped with when they go to the job market in the world that is changing so fast. So I want to ask Mohammad Khan from Constellation Energy to please join us. John from Excellus Insurance Company, please join us, and Michael Backus from Oswego Health.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Mike Backus, President and CEO of Oswego Health, former adjunct professor out here in the comms department. So it's a pleasure to be here, and really excited to talk about this with SUNY Oswego, your students, because really this is something that's happening in healthcare very, very quickly. We're starting to already start seeing those consultants, already starting to see those businesses start to approach us. We're obviously moving very cautiously in this environment at Oswego Health, but certainly the industry is going to be changing very quickly, and we want to get ahead of that. So good on all of you for being here, and thank you for SUNY Oswego for having us.
Hello, John Griffith, Chief Technology Officer with Excellus Blue Cross Blue Shield. Thank you for having me. SUNY graduate, not last year, a little far. SUNY graduate. I'm actually also on the advisory board of some other SUNY schools in regards to their computer science department. So that's wonderful. My 3 daughters, my 3 kids all went through the SUNY system. And ironically, as I walked down, I saw my niece out front as well. So she's a student of SUNY. So appreciative to be here and looking forward to having a conversation on AI, but also on business and AI. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Mohammad Khan. I am the maintenance director for the Constellation nuclear generating plants down the road here for Fitzpatrick and 9 Mile Point as well. In our industry, we're now learning how to spell AI. So we're at the infancy stage, but obviously, based on the potential discussions we heard, with our panelists, a couple minutes ago, it's huge, right? And there's lots of potential. And how do we leverage that in an ethical way, in an inclusive way, is what my industry is going to be focused on. And, as to from a cost advantage standpoint, to help us, grow our business, to help us stay viable in the community. We do have a vested interest in this community. We want to be here. We want to make sure that we grow our assets. And my goal and my colleagues' goal is how do we leverage this technology to run more efficiently, safer, and to be here for the next generation to come.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So I'm going to start with the questions that we have for the business leaders section. So first, can you tell us how you are using generative AI in your industry right now? And what are your plans for near future? So what is it that you're going to incorporate in the near future?
Sure. Thank you. Certainly, we've been approached by a lot of different industry, and there's a lot of technologies, especially within charting, for physicians and for clinical folks to make just a more efficient workspace for patients. I think everybody knows the healthcare workforce across the country is challenged in a way that I don't think we've ever really seen from a workforce development perspective. And I know that SUNY Oswego is working very hard to help us with some of those workforce development issues. But we don't see that slowing down anytime soon. So anything we can do to help motivate and encourage our providers to get more efficient, to see patients in a more quick manner, and then also automate those results, we are very interested in. However, I think as our panelists prior to us talked about that, the concern there is making sure that that is done in an efficient way and that there's not anything that's missed, because obviously you're dealing in healthcare with someone's life. So making sure that that data is there, making sure there's redundancies built in, making sure there's an auditing process behind it is very, very important for us. So we're taking, very much baby steps at this, but just, there's already a couple of different approaches that I've seen where you can automate literally a patient's entire room so that you go into that room with your nurse. Everything you're doing in that room is, at least from an audio perspective, noted, and within what created that auto note from the chart perspective, so that it goes then into the doctor's note when he finishes up his exam or whatever that person may be doing. I think that's a really great approach to help us continue to automate those time frames to make accessibility a better opportunity for us in healthcare.
Thank you very much.
So I think one of our panelists, Saeideh, mentioned this, how quickly technology changes. I think the one thing I want to stress here is what doesn't change, right? What doesn't change, and what doesn't change for us, at Excellus is a not-for-profit payer in this community, is the affordability and quality of the communities we serve and we live in. Okay. And so AI offers us limitless potential on how we make that more efficient, and how we increase the quality, partnering with Mike in that provider space, in making this ecosystem move forward. You got to remember, we probably, because of our market presence, have as much data on the health of upstate New York as anyone. And we have been employing machine learning in our data science environments in a variety of places for years in order to leverage that to meet that mission. And now generative AI gives us another set of tools and a progression of technology that we can take that to another level, to partner in order to really serve our mission. So as much as it changes, the purpose doesn't change at all.
For Constellation, we took an oath to the community, to operate these plants safely and reliably, 24/7, right, around the clock. We're starting small, and we talked a little bit about productivity. Right now, we have a co-pilot, with Microsoft, and we're not in bed with Microsoft per se, but that's the vendor of choice right now for us. That we're experimenting with the core suite of Office applications, whether it's Teams, Outlook, Word, Excel, and how do we leverage that to be more productive? And we're just trying to define what that is. I can't go to the meeting without having a PowerPoint presentation, right? Slide decks being prepared, business plans being prepared, and how do we use the technology to help us, streamline those decks and, streamline contract negotiations. One of the things that we're also piloting right now is we have a suite of assets in our hydro facilities in the Pennsylvania area, and how do we use the technology to protect, waterways and water flows, and which hydro plants do we want to, we call it peak plants, right? They come on based on needs. They're not 100% running plant like where I work 24/7. So how do we use that technology to say, okay, I want plant X, a hydro facility, to start up and run for, Y amount of hours or days. So that's something that we're leveraging right now, but we're starting with the production side of it in the office environment to see, how do we leverage it? So that's what we're starting off right now.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So the second question that we have for the business leaders is about the benefits and the disadvantages of AI. So in your industry, in your field, what do you think is the most beneficial use of generative AI, and what are the dangers that you see in using AI?
Absolutely. So the benefits, certainly, I talk about access a lot in what I do. So the more efficient, the more space that we can create there, more availability that we can make providers to help manage healthcare. That just helps us across the board in a number of different ways. So that's kind of the first real big benefit there. The disadvantage side of things that I think we're very much just starting to really understand is the cybersecurity risks, the access to things, and then that as was mentioned previously, that potential issue of making sure you've got redundancies built in there so that you're protecting that patient, because literally you're dealing with someone's life. So making sure you have that in there, but I think that cybersecurity component is also a big part of this. You see that issue with HIPAA breaches, you see those cybersecurity threats. I'm certain that my friend down here on the end will talk about this at Constellation. From a homeland security perspective, from a data security perspective, we all are very, very concerned about that in this space because especially the open source component to this, that was a great point that was made earlier. There's just so much in there that you have to proceed very, very cautiously in healthcare. And then also I know we're going to talk probably about regulations as well and what that means from a payer's perspective. So I think that's just a really important part to talk to as well.
Thank you. Yeah, and in the coming questions, we will discuss the regulation part. And I think what Michael mentioned is very true, especially in healthcare. People's lives is at danger, right? So Soroush mentioned that some physicians are using ChatGPT, and if it provides them with the wrong diagnosis, wrong solution, so a person's life may be at risk. And the other thing that worries me is seeing a physician or a healthcare provider inserting private information into those systems, right? So that's another layer of concern that we should have. So
I think what Mike said. No, I'm kidding. I do. But I see the benefits are obviously limitless. We heard that from our expert panel as well. We're taking this data on what we'll call our foundational data models, really combining it with these large language models. And now we have got such a breadth of data to look at, and Gen AI allows us to be able to actually process that in a time frame, right? That actually makes it real. I mean, honestly, if you call one of our call centers, if you're one of our members, and if you are, that's great. If not, see me on the way out. That's great as well. When you call our call center, it goes, we look at those calls and we're real time trending during the day. We're real time, like what's going on. Medicare calls are up, safety net call. We're trending. We're adjusting our call centers. We're finding out the root cause of what's going on. And that's back to that affordability, being more efficient, and the quality that we're getting to those right people. You know, the risks in our panelists here and in there, I want to talk about a different risk. And this is something that we're seeing out here. And I don't know if it's really even a risk, but I'm going to go there. Gen AI is creating a tremendous amount of anxiety in the job market. And so if you talk about this, what jobs will Gen AI take over? And we hear it in our company. And I was speaking to some of our national groups a couple of weeks ago, and that's what it is. And so who's looking at that? And so what are those people going to do? And how much of that is that going to take in? Saeideh kind of alluded to it as one of our experts, this kind of socio-technological risk we have. And are we really ready for that? And are we really? And we'll talk later about equipping SUNY Oswego or any students with the skills, and how does that change from what we're doing now and what we're going to teach later. And so I think that one is buried a little underneath, but it's one we really have to think about, especially in a forum like this, where we're really preparing the current and next generations for really taking us forward.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up, and I'm going to touch on that a little later. But back to the original question about how we're leveraging it. We talk a lot about efficiency, and obviously that's pretty broad. But in where I work, one of the things that we really like to focus on is reliability engineering, I call it, for lack of a better term. As you can imagine, a power plant, there's literally thousands of components, and sensors and switches and transmitters, and they all come into we call it our central computing system. But that's just data, and then it takes the human, one of your alma maters who's here with me, to take that data, to create trends, to analyze it, right? And all that takes time. And I think the next step for us is to take that data and come up, let the algorithm come up with recommendations. But, and as we heard earlier, validity and verification is paramount, right? We work in a highly regulated environment, and I don't have the opportunity to go in front of the federal government to say that, well, the AI made the bad decision. I'm accountable at the end of the day. Okay. And that verification and validation is crucial. The human element, right? Looking at that outcome as well, to have an input and say, yeah, this makes sense. So I don't think I think it's a starting point for us to leverage it, whatever it provides to us. And then there's that element where we have to also leverage our training, our experience and background to validate and verify that it is a legitimate solution, whatever it's being recommended. So that's what I meant by efficiency there. And you brought up, inevitably, we're talking about jobs, right? 1,600 employees between the plants here in the local community. as we become more efficient, more productive, I think at the end of the day, in a competitive environment, we're cutting costs. And we're not there yet, but that's something that as business leaders, is in the back of our heads. Where's that going to take us, and how do we account for that in this environment? So big unknown there.
Perfect. Thank you very much for the wonderful talks about the dangers of AI. So with regard to job, there is an interesting saying. They say the CEOs that can use generative AI will take the jobs of CEOs who cannot use generative AI. And I think that's one of the big things that will happen. So I'm not afraid of jobs being lost by that much, but those who are not equipped with the skills to use those systems will be sooner or later replaced by the ones that can use that. So I want to move to the next question. I think Michael was very interested in that discussion for two reasons, right? Because of your industry. So when we talk about generative AI, there's always the need for changes in regulations. There's so many things, from privacy, from protecting the patients, from the data that is being used, the suggestions, how we are going to use that, right? I wanted to give you a very simple example to show how important regulations are. Let's say with the technology today, anybody on any computer can duplicate your voice. So you can simply download a free app. I did it for my own speech, and it can duplicate my voice. I can write a text and can read it. And many of the banks, insurance companies are using voice to authenticate their callers, right? So anybody can duplicate our voice, call our insurance, call our healthcare provider, right? And get whatever they want to do, right? There are so many needs for regulations, protective measures, and such things to happen, right? So I want to move to that question about regulation. So Michael, what do you think? What are the changes that we need to do?
A lot. And I think you heard it from our industry leaders, but also from from the folks, the expert panel, but also industry leaders we'll talk about here in a minute. The pace of this change, I think, is overwhelming for the regulators. I think that's just, let's start there and say period, end of sentence. DC can talk about, this is going to be a national, it's actually going to be a global issue, but nationally here in our country, especially because of the for-profit mentality, I think that was a great call out. You have that ability to buy in and say, all right, I want this regulation to look like this because that's going to help my bottom line, help me further invest, right? It's capitalism 101. In healthcare in particular, that's a frightening thing. And it's certainly something that I think you're going to start to see that balance get struck pretty quickly. Because again, healthcare, especially coming out of the pandemic, is being asked, how can you do more with less? Because our workforce has been so challenged, because so many folks have left the profession. How can you find more points to bring, I said this about 3 times now, access to healthcare? And I think that regulation side of it is going to be where that give and take comes. And I know my colleague to my right will talk about this from the payer's perspective, but it's going to be just as important on the payer side, the insurance company side, as it is the providers to say, here's the redundancies we've built in place. And we're also not going to stand in the way of those appeals and those denials and all the other things that come into those charts. But here's the process that we hope to have so that we're able to move all that along. It's a very, very difficult process now. I'm hopeful that AI can help automate that. But again, it's going to require industry leaders, thought leaders, and I really appreciated the conversation on the academic side, the researchers, to bring that voice from an ethics standpoint forward. Because I think that's one thing that healthcare is going to always go back to is, what is the quality outcome that we want to have happen? And how can we guarantee that that patient's voice is always heard? I know from a small town, health systems perspective, Oswego Health, 1,300 employees strong. Our quality of care is as high as you're going to find it. You can go to CMS scores, you can go to patient satisfaction scores. That's all of those things. And part of that is because we tend to have a higher clinical implant on that patient that we see. It's not necessarily a PA. It's not necessarily a lower level folks that see you. It's an RN. It's a doctor. It's somebody on those spaces. That to me leads to really high quality, and we've been very benefiting that from a Oswego Health perspective. We don't want to lose that in this entire thought conversation through AI. We want to make sure we create more access. We want to make sure we're seeing patients more regularly. However, we want to make sure we're doing that efficiently, effectively, and ethically.
Yeah, once again, multifaceted right here, state, federal, global, and probably most importantly, ethical, right? That level, that's where we are. You know, I get the new regulations we need. What probably concerns me even more than that is the pressure it puts on the existing ones. So HIPAA, written in 1996. If anybody read HIPAA, it's a tough read. Okay. But anyways, it's a very, very, very important step forward in where we went, and really about pH and protected health information and how you do that and how you handle data with privacy. Boy, when you start to get into these Gen AI type of worlds, it becomes, I don't know how attainable those existing regulations that are so foundational to where we need to be can adapt to that. So I think you've got kind of the double whammy of the new and how about the existing? And it's a challenge that we have to embrace rapidly. It is one we've got to get to right now. So multi-tier, but the challenge is real. We've got to take that on right now.
Yes, certainly multi-tier. You know, for the nuclear industry, we're regulated by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the NRC. 10 CFR 50 is the code book of regulations. And it's pretty straightforward, black and white, you know, on the rules. And yeah, I personally believe that it will need tweaking, but it will not be stifling. We know what we need to go do. There's discussions about, you know, how open source is open source. You know, in my world, I think, you know, we're going to tweak it, but it won't be so much open source, right? Based on the regulation and the industry, just being in the nuclear industry that I work in. So, and they take great pride in the industry because we leverage each other across the United States as well as the world and all the nuclear plants and sharing information. So is each fleet of plants going to have their own version of chat, you know, GBT? Absolutely, right? We're calling it chat CEG for Constellation Energy. But at the end of the day, with the regulations, you know, governing the local, you know, United States as well as we call WANO internationally, I think we'll work that out. It's not going to be tomorrow, you know, next year, but I'm confident we'll get there because at the end of the day, you know, there's decisions to be made, and the accountability is with the human at the end of the day to make those decisions. We cannot just delegate that to, you know, an object, you know, a program or algorithm. So we'll get there.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So this brings us to the very last question, but I would say it is one of the most important ones. So anybody who is educating these days, right, trying to be prepared for what's coming to the market. So how should they prepare themselves, and what should we as a university provide to them so they are equipped with the skills and knowledge that they need to success in the future job market? So what are the skills that you're looking for?
So the ability to translate this so that I understand it. No, I'm joking, but I think that is a real thing that, you know, the job market is going to change. And I think that's a great call out, John, that we had to kind of talk about where this is going to go going forward and what replications are you going to have, but then also what retractions are you going to have from an industry perspective. I think it's important for students, especially, to come through this process. I think it's a great learning component because it is going to be our future. There's no question about it. It's going too quickly. And, you know, we talked a little bit when we started preparing about this panel about in healthcare, just wearables. And, you know, I noticed one of the panels before us had worked at Meta, and I know some of the work that those folks are doing, you know, creating that virtual environment for healthcare. There's definitely some legs in there to have some conversations about where you actually see your provider, your patient. I think that there's some definite components could be in there. And then the wearable technology we have, all of that is going to quickly become really into your data within your chart. So the ability to understand that, help translate it, and then help explain that within the environment, I think that's a great opportunity for all of you, for students, to start looking at things from a perspective of saying, listen, you're going into an industry, especially in healthcare, where, you know, you have the normal blocking and tackling of go see your provider, you've got your RN, you've got your folks, but you also have that other ability to help scale. And if you can help explain that, if you can help show some of that value and take on some of that ownership within the industry, especially in the next 5-10 years, I think that's going to be when you start seeing some of that impact. And there's some really great opportunities there to show efficiency, because that's something that I look at every single day is how do I find more ways to scale what I provide? If you're able to help me find those efficiencies, that's going to help us in a big time way in healthcare.
Well, I think from the perspective of we need generative curriculum, right? And and we're seeing it here. We're seeing it here where, within you already have courses on this, and that is changing, and that's hard to do, but so necessary. So I applaud this institution right there for doing that, and you of course as well for leading that. So you need generative curriculum. I think what happened in our panelists mentioned, kind of when the internet, and then we got personal devices and smartphones, and now unfortunately I'm old enough that I've been through 6 waves. I think we are on what I would call the 7th wave, and I think it's there. And in each of those waves, the new workforce had to re-equip themselves with a new baseline of technological skills. And I think we're there. And I don't even know if we know what they look like yet, but that's going to be there. I'm a chief technology officer, but I think I really call myself the chief, how do I apply business to technology and vice versa officer. And so I've really kind of, I think, hopefully matured into that. I'm working at it. I'm in therapy. No, I'm kidding. But we do that. But those business skills, we still need great people to be providers. We need great people that understand the engineering of running nuclear power plants and those types of things. Those are still great skills. But the technological you need to do, I think you're just going to have to amp up again, one more click or a couple more clicks. And by the way, that's not going to stop.
I think I would be irresponsible to point out to a specific curriculum or major, from where I sit, and the students in the audience, to say that I want a computer science background, I want a heavy programming background, I want engineering only. It's I can't do that. We'll continue with our hiring strategy, with strong technical backgrounds, whether it be computer science, engineering, whatever it is, because I think we're going to go in the industry. That implementation of this technology is we're going to work with the vendors, the Googles, the Microsofts. They're going to come in and establish it. In my team, your future engineers will leave this institution, or your computer majors will come in to help with implementation, maintenance, and how to take it to the next step to further develop it. So I think continue, the curriculum that you're on. I know the university is going to integrate AI naturally into your program. You have to in order to compete. It's just the world we live in, and it will continue to recruit the strong students that you guys provide. So I don't want you to walk out of here thinking you got to have an AI background, you got to have a computer science background, right? We'll be here. We're here tomorrow. Yeah, we'll be talking to engineering students as well as computer science students. So.
Okay, thank you very much. I think one of the very important takeaways for me from the education part was that some of our students are scared when we talk about AI because they think they need to learn the algorithm behind the AI and they need to be able to develop the systems. But I think what actually the businesses, the industry is looking for is somebody who can work with AI, somebody who can understand AI and can control AI, supervise AI, and incorporate that into day-to-day business, right? I think that's one of the skills that everybody in every field can get. If somebody is in graphic design, they can use it to generate images. If somebody is in healthcare, they can use it for their own purposes, diagnosis, etc., etc. If somebody is in engineering, they can use it for writing codes and being more efficient in their own job. So I agree with you that it's not specific to computer science. It's not specific to writing algorithm. You don't need those skills. You need to understand how to use AI to be more productive, to be more efficient, to be more effective in your jobs. So thank you very much for the wonderful discussion that we had here. We have a couple of minutes left. So I want to ask one last question. So we all discussed AI, industry, how we use it in business, but can you tell us how you are using ChatGPT yourself in your day-to-day work?
Absolutely. You sprung that one on us last minute too. You didn't prepare us for that question. No, it's funny. So I started using ChatGPT, I want to say, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago. Let's just call it that. And I had no idea what it was. I don't have a computer science background by any sense of the imagination. I just heard about it and I said, I know this is coming, right? It's in all the magazines, it's in all the conversation that we get in healthcare. And I started plugging it in kind of, I think Manu said there something about using it to write letters. And I started trying to just say, can it write me a thank you note? You know, I'm famous for writing handwritten thank you notes. I think I might have sent Jen some and she goes, what did you write? Because I can't read your handwriting. I do have bad handwriting. But I started using them to just write some thank you notes. And then I said, all right, can it write me a business plan? There's this new expansion that we were talking about bringing in healthcare at Oswego Health. And I said, you know, let me just see if this can make us. And it spit out in 35 seconds something that would have taken me probably a couple hours to at least have laid the groundwork on. And it gave me a framework to work from. Just some very basic things. But again, I think it helps at least inspire that thought process and then starts to say, all right, from a business development perspective, can you lay the groundwork to help trust my instinct a little bit, which I think is very helpful for me. You know, the other side too is I think it does help us kind of ask questions that we know answers to. Sometimes you say, you know, is there a way to say this? Is there a way to construct it better? You know, so I think somebody mentioned proofreading. I think those are some basic things that I've already been able to see that it's helped on as well. So certainly a great technology that's on my homepage. So it's very helpful.
Thank you. John and Mohammed.
Well, unfortunately, I am a computer science major. So, of course, I'm trying to reverse engineer the code and trying to figure out. I grabbed two architects, two programmers, whatever. We're in the labs. We're trying to figure out, trying to say we're smarter than it is or it's smarter than we are. So we have really kind of done it at that level. In regards to that, my two daughters who are actually at the, in a SUNY school right now, hopefully they're studying and not using it for something else, right? We're hoping that in regards to that, but we're really kind of looking at, because of my background with ComSci, we're really looking at it to how is it a foundational for the next thing. So that's kind of what we're looking at now, and it is the foundation for the next thing. That's really what it is. So.
Yeah, 14 years ago, you know, I was trying to explain to my 7-year-old back then what I do for a living, and I kept it simple. We move water. We take water from Lake Ontario, we boil it, make steam, and make a turbine go roundy, and then we produce electricity. There are literally thousands of rotating machines and equipment, right? Pumps, motors. And what I have experimented a little bit with is the failure modes. We call it the failure modes and effects analysis for a motor. You know, what are the different failure modes? Because when we do troubleshooting, if something's not working, right, that's the mode we go into as engineers. Like, okay, where do we need to go to troubleshoot? So I've been experimenting a little bit with the motor side because I'm an electrical engineer by background, and taking that to pumps and other equipment that we have in the plant. So that's how I've experimented with it. And yeah, I was a little I did call my son in Rochester in school there, and I asked him, it's like, what are you using for? And you know, his response to me was quite humbling. He goes, Dad, I'm scared to use it. You know, so he's staying away for now because, you know, there's a lot of potential and there's a lot of misuse. And we heard a lot of dialogue about misuse, and you can Google it and read it, students using it to write papers and homework assignments and stuff like that. So he's also a little cautiously experimenting with it, but he's humbled by the technology, and so am I. And it's a journey now beginning.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you for the very wonderful discussion. So now we have, I think, around 10 minutes left. So I open the floor for any questions that the audience may have here for the business leaders on stage. Okay, I think Prabhakar, I think, has the question. Yeah.
You know, so you have this tool. I don't want to say it a great tool or anything. I think the jury is still out. But from your vantage point, is there one or two things that, you know, in the past you had said, I wish I could do this. And then you find this tool and go back to your wish list and say, hey, this is something that seems to kind of open the doors to kind of satisfy that list. Does anyone have any recollection of such a wish, and perhaps the potential this could unlock that wish?
Yeah, having we're doing trending. Yeah, are we going after the symptoms, or am I really understanding the true cause? And I think this tool is going to help me and my team get to that point. To make sure that we're not going after symptoms. So I think that's what I'm looking forward to see how to use it. And as I said earlier, responsibly using it, because at the end of the day, I'm accountable as a human to whatever the algorithm tells me that I want to go, how to apply it in an ethical manner. So causal analysis and troubleshooting is my wish list.
We talked about it and we really approach it from a data perspective, but manage data and then combine cloud computing, right? So now, even as a consumer, I mean, 10 years ago, you had to build a whole data center to get enough horsepower to do what a consumer can do from their living room. Combine that with basically unlimited processing, memory, cache in storage that you can pin up, apply your data, and now prompt engineering against it. You are getting near real-time answers on something that used to take hours, days to compute. And we're just starting to unlock that at that next iteration. And that is pretty exciting.
Yeah, and I think about it from the emergent care perspective. That's just where my head goes. So if you can, come into my emergency department and you've got a bunch of symptoms and we can put a wearable device in your ear that you can sit in my waiting room for 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, I'm going to get all your vital signs. It's going to load into your chart. That just saved me a boatload of time. And it probably helped your outcome in a big way very, very quickly. The quicker I can get you diagnosed, the quicker we can get you to access the right providers, the better. So I think that's part of the future. Again, making sure that's done in a safe and secure position is really what we're talking about, though.
Perfect. Thank you. Here we have a question from the online attendees. So the question is about the MBA program. So in our MBA program, we have professionals who have a career already in healthcare, in engineering, different fields, and now they want to take over more executive kind of jobs after graduating from the MBA program. So what do you suggest to those professionals who are trying to improve their career toward more executive jobs? How can they incorporate Gen AI into their work?
I think that there's a lot of different ways that you can take existing knowledge and build on that to drive towards executive level change. And again, I go back to being a thought leader in some respects. I think that's something in healthcare that we don't spend enough time talking about. If there's a way with a background in Gen AI to really lead on just bringing that kind of thing to it, especially a demographic like us at Oswego Health, where you've got some knowledge and you got a knowledge base, maybe even some academic study and some research ability, because I do think that there's some platforms you're going to be able to scale out of. And I think health systems like mine that have the ability to work with institutions like SUNY Oswego or others to help show and develop some research behind how these things have helped transform access to care and reliability. I think you've got some ability to do that really quickly. And I think some of that can easily be focused into the MBA study.
I think you mentioned earlier, it's a tool. You've got to understand how to apply the tool. You don't have to understand Gen AI. You've got to understand when to apply it, how to apply it, and have that understanding. You mentioned on, how you assimilate that into what you're doing. It's like any other tool. This one's just probably way more powerful than some of the previous generations of tools we had at our disposal.
Yeah, at the MBA level, we're talking decision making, strategy, and innovation. Because that's the differentiator for the executives, right? They're spending their time as to how to grow the business, how to compete, what's the next step, not in the tactical day-to-day stuff. So decision-making, strategy, innovation is key in how to understand the technology and how to apply it.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So if we do not have any other questions in floor or online, I think we can conclude the session. Thank you very much for attending the session, Mohammed, John, and Michael, and everyone for being here. Thank you very much.